And here we go. And we are live. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Escape the 8-Bar Loop, Episode 2. I got a 99 BPM track right here, and I'm going to show you how to make it into a piece of music that we can jam with or record as a full track into the arrangement. So I got the chat window up. Say hi when you get here. Hello, hello, hello. And what's it all about? So it's easy to make a loop in live. We got one right here. I titled this scene Main Drop. And you get stuck in the loop. Like, how do you turn that into something in the arrangement? Let's remove everything in the arrangement. Well, it relates to phrases and extending your loop into longer sections. I'm going to show you some techniques for doing that. But before we do that, I'm going to do a little bit of session prep. This is something that I do all the time in Session View when I'm first making the loop. So let's start at the beginning. How do you even get stuck in the loop? Well, first off, let's check out some ingredients. Got a lumpy little kick drum. And the reason I have a scene called ingredients up here is up in this top section, when I'm doing sound design, making clips and everything, I don't want to risk putting something in the arrangement and then deleting the clip or having a whole bunch of scenes down here and, missing a clip and losing an idea. So I start with all my ideas up on top. And to get through this kind of quick, you can see I've got kick drum first, a drum group with all these drum layers, and I group all the drums so I can condense them easily with the Command G technique. We'll talk about these blinking triangles in a second. Hey, Brian, what's the scoop to escape the loop? The scoop is called phrases and making 8-bar things instead of just a 1-bar thing. Kick drum with a 1-bar repetition. 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. In case anybody doesn't know about bars and beats, when I say measures in bars and beats, it's counting like numbers or how long the loop goes or the musical phrase. And you can see this kick drum has actually some interesting patterns. There are little grace notes and things. Listen to what happens in between 12 and 13. Those are like little turnarounds or rhythmic extras that tell you something different's happening. So we're not just hearing a kick drum like a metronome. We're actually hearing a kick drum give you a signal when something's changing, like right before the end of an 8-bar section. And this is what it's all about for escaping the loop, is making beats that develop over time. And to start with, let's get an idea of what's in the track. And Brian, thanks for joining us. If you have any other questions, drop in the comments, I'll get to you. Next, in the instruments, we've got a bass line. And I collect all the ideas, okay? If you notice the pattern, this is kind of like 2 sections of a song. Full bass line's a little bit longer, 2 bars. And the main bass line is kind of like just a 1-bar groove. Then I have this alternate bass line here. It's like the main one, but even more simple. And there are some follow actions with the blinking triangles that I'll get to in a second. Now I have a chord progression. This one called main chords goes with the main bass line. And the other one goes with the first bass line. So this is like a 2-chord progression, a little bit longer, versus a 1-chord progression for a build-up or a groove or something like that. And I'll talk about all those a little bit more after we introduce the elements. Now here, what is the operator doing? We have the operator sound. We got a little arpeggiator set to 48th notes, super fast, and some delay on here. So this is like a little melodic thing. Let's hear these together. And in terms of sound design and mixing, look at this. Bass line is in the sub-range, chords are in the middle of the mid-range, and the operator thing is in the high-frequency melody. So I can pretty much do anything I want to with these 3 MIDI tracks, and they're not going to overlap and crush each other in the frequency range, because we've got lows, mids, and highs, like 1 instrument in low, 1 instrument in mids, 1 instrument in highs. That's kind of an audio thing, but it makes composition a lot easier if you have space in the frequency range for making sounds. So let's keep moving on. Let's meet what else is in the track. Here's some really fun stuff. There is a riser happening, And you can see that it's playing, but I don't hear anything. Why is that? Because it's soloed. Duh. And we've got some automation in the risers. We have 3 of them together layering up. I'll go through these in detail to show you what I did. The point is that these make an 8-bar riser. So it's not just 8 bars of static. It's something that changes over time. And at the end of the phrase, it leads to something. So let's listen to just the risers with the kick and drums. Pay attention to track 13 where these 3 risers come together. Notice 15 and 16 are panned left and right to get some stereo image. Ooh, I hear it building up. And then it finishes. I got a little compression on there so it doesn't get too loud. Let's put on the clipper. And it even did some cool flanger and stuff. So why am I doing this? Well, I want this static to be a signal. So every time that static ramps up and builds, it turns into something. What does it turn into? A crash. Now, I could put a crash symbol on an audio track and come over and press the mouse and launch the crash when I want it. That's what you do when you're making a basic beat. You click, oh, I want the kick drum. Okay, I'll click there and make the kick drum. I want the bass line. Click on the bass line. Hey, Joe's here. What's going on? Is that Subspan? Is that Subspan? Or which Joe is it? I'm curious. I mean, you don't have to tell me, but I like to say hi to people I know. So what I want to do is get off the mouse, right? You can see me here. I don't want to have to go and oh, I missed the crash. I don't want to have to go and press a single clip launch triangle for every sound that is coming into the track. That works with, 4 tracks of audio where you can just go, okay, kick drum, okay, drums, okay, bass line or something. But when you have a multi-track session with a lot of audio in there or a lot of MIDI and a lot of sounds, you don't have enough time to click the mouse on all the track launches to start new sounds at the same time as stopping other sounds, at the same time as remembering, oh, it's been 8 bars, I want to launch a crash over here. Maybe with a controller, you can do it on some pads if you like finger drumming. But the technique I'm doing here is building phrases where I don't have to be there on the mouse. So check out this crash. This crash is a drum rack. We got some drum sounds in the rack. And we have a MIDI clip that's 16 bars long. So check out what happens. I'll play the kick drum, the drums, and the crash, And I want to just illustrate that when you make a longer phrase like 8 bars or 16 bars with a MIDI clip or an audio clip, you don't have to go and remember to launch the sound at the drop of the next phrase. It automatically happens for you. There's a reverse crash. And on bar 9, this little simple mini crash comes in. Let me show you the mini crash. That's right here. I chopped off a crash. It's the same as the long one. I just copied it to a different drum pad, cropped it short, and put a delay on it. Here comes a reverse crash again, and the big crash on the downbeat. So this 16-bar MIDI clip, 16-bar crash, I can basically play this for the whole entire song, and it's just going to keep looping. Every 16 bars, something's going to happen. And then along with that, every 16 bars, maybe I'll launch a bass line or mute the kick drum or launch a new drum loop. And this is like my guidepost, actually. This one and these risers are the signals that tell me what to do if I'm playing live. They tell the dance floor what to expect if people are dancing. They tell the DJ what to expect if they're mixing records. When you're mixing records, what's the right time to drop a new track? Answer is when you hear a crash cymbal. If you drop a new record on the crash of the old record, it's almost guaranteed to be lined up with the phrasing, so your new record comes in and the beat drops at the right time. Just an average Joe, haha. Playing average shows with average hoes. What's that Wu-Tang line? Just an average Joe. Bum, 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 bum. All right, never mind Wu-Tang. We're talking about how to escape the 8-bar loop. So first technique, let's say you're doing a crash cymbal. This is a really easy technique you can do. Make a drum rack. So you make a drum rack instrument, drag your sounds on there, and then make a 16-bar MIDI loop and put crash cymbals on the downbeats. The downbeat is bar 1, the downbeat is bar 9. And if you want to do a reverse crash, you can do that too. You just have to put the timing in there. Depending on how long your reverse crash is, you have to start it early so that it finishes on the downbeat. Watch this. I'm going to launch on bar 7. So the reverse crash has to line up based on what the sample is and how long that sample takes. You have to fool around a little bit to get the MIDI note in the right place so the reverse swell builds up and stops on the crash. So technique 1, make a MIDI clip with your crash cymbals. So as you're listening, you can hear it and you'll hear the crashes come in on the beat. Brian, switching to the PC for a better view. Yes, hit the full screen button. I should be broadcasting in 1080, so I think it's going to be in detail enough. Now let's look at how do we make these risers. I'm just going to go through these escaping the loop techniques. So number 1, cymbals phrase. We just talked about that. Number 2, the risers phrase. Let's go in detail a little bit. I mentioned that these are using clip automation. I love making tracks in session view. You can build all your ideas, experiment to see which ones sound right, and then at the end, hit the big red button and record into the arrangement. So first off, static noise. Clip. So get the envelopes in view. I'm doing this in Live 10 because I'm going to make this a live pack for people to download. So we want to see envelope for clip, volume automation. Then you just put in some breakpoints and drag it down. So at the beginning, it's quiet. I'm going to hold the Alt key, bend that loop a little bit so it makes a natural curve. Now within this clip, the automation is changing the level. I don't want to do mixer automation because that's going to automate the fader, and I want to keep it so that I can copy this clip, play the clip, and have that automation stay with the clip and not be attached to the mixer or something that's going to kind of, it's a little more confusing. I like to keep it compact with clip automation. So we are automating the volume number 1, and then in auto filter, we're changing the frequency, but it's a high pass filter. So in other words, when the filter is up, you don't hear anything. Over the course of 8 bars, the filter comes down so that the sound gets heavier and heavier. Give me type in like yes filter if you understand what I'm doing with the clip automation. The idea is that with the clip volume, it's getting louder over 8 bars. And with the filter frequency, the high pass filter is coming down, so it's getting more bassy. So if you listen to this one loop along with, let's say, just basic drum beat, you almost don't hear the loop you don't hear the static at the beginning of the 8-bar loop. And what we want is over 8 bars, the static comes into your consciousness and you feel it like, oh, there's a sound coming in. And just like a reverse cymbal, it gets louder and louder, grabs your attention, and stops. I just realized that's a 7-bar loop and it's supposed to be 8. Who cut that loop? One more time. Joseph, yes, filter, thank you. And I like how it cuts out and goes back to almost 0 at the end when the loop turns around. So it gets out of the way. What did we do in the other one? Sweeping static. Now this is kind of a problem because it's a 2-bar loop, but I want to automate some stuff like the filter. So how do I deal with that? Well, what I did is a little thing called disconnecting, unlinking the envelopes. So in your envelopes, let's start with clip, volume. You see this little switch says unlinked? If you have your envelope linked, you're only going to be able to do volume automation within the 2-bar audio loop. But Ableton has this really cool thing where you can unlink the automation, make a longer loop. That's 8 bars of that. And now Live is going to do this automation over the course of 8 bars when the audio clip is only 2 bars long. So we're listening for this sweeping static to come in. See, the 2-bar loop is just cycling through, but the clip automation is taking 8 bars. It's super cool. Let's make sure that's the right duration. And I decided to get creative with auto filter again. This time I have a low pass filter that's opening. So this static is going to start in a lower frequency and come up. and the filter opens. Let's give that a little more resonance and hear that together with the first one. Hope you can hear this on the broadcast. I know it's kind of quiet. Brian got to run. All right, thanks for checking in. Let me know if you have any, you can drop a comment if you have any questions later. I'll get back to you. Okay, and then the third layer, we might only need 2, honestly. That's a 2-bar clip volume running, and auto filter frequency happening again. This time, let's do a notch filter. So now what we have is a textured 8-bar static cycle or riser that's going to come up like a wash of sound. It goes in an 8-bar cycle. It gets to a loud level at the end of the bar, and then at the end of the phrase, and then stops in time for the crash. So earlier, a minute ago, I played the riser loop with the crash. Those go together and make a nice fit. So techniques you can use. Number 1, make a MIDI clip for your crash and have the MIDI notes fire off at the beginning. So you don't have to launch with the launch button with your mouse. You can just do it with the MIDI clip. Number 2, take an audio loop, like 8 bars of static, put in some automation. Just show your envelopes window. I don't know what version of Live you're using, but whatever you're using, get to the envelopes window, select clip automation, volume automation. You can hit the B for the pencil tool. Come here. Doop, doop. Or you can hit the B on the keyboard to get pencil tool. Or you can just double clip and make some breakpoints and have the breakpoints rise. And notice that this breakpoint, it hits full level so that the last bar is loud. I didn't do full level all the way at the end of the bar because then it kind of never gets to full level, or it'll loop before full level. So I get it up to full level for the last bar. And I dropped an auto filter. One fun thing about using this, if you want to automate a clip parameter, just click on it in the plugin and come back, and you see this envelope has selected it. Frequency. If I want to automate resonance, I click on resonance, go back over here, and resonance is selected. So Live makes it really easy to do clip automation. You can play with a sound, tweak a parameter, and then go over to your envelopes view, and that parameter is selected, which is super fun. So we have 3 static noise risers. We got a cymbals crash. How else do we escape the 8-bar loop? Well, we're trying to create phrases so that the music stays interesting and doesn't just loop and loop and loop and loop. And phrases also let us develop the sounds and play them with signals that tell us when it's time to play a new sound. So the crash or the risers are like, hey, DJ, wake up, play a new sound. Let me show you baseline clip stacks. This is in our instrument group. Here's our baseline. Remember we saw these triangles blinking like this? So the top clip has do, 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 do. These are 2 variations of the same bass line. Alt 1, down, bow, 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 and Alt 2, bow, 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 bow. See, in Alt 2, the second note is high, and Alt 1, the second note is low. Listen to the difference of these 2. That's the first one. Here's the second one. So this is a variation. We're going to have an 8-bar phrase where the bass line is playing a slightly different note, just like a musician would do. You want this to sound musical and feel like somebody's inside there making it happen. So listen to this cycle. This is actually, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So it's on a 4-bar cycle. And how did I set up these follow actions? The theory here is that we're having a phrase. And to do that, I have 2 variations of the loop. And then I go to my follow actions. These are in the launch window in Live 10. They moved in Live 12, so you might have to adjust that a little bit. And they got more simple in Live 12. But basically, we've got 2 separate actions. So this clip, Alt 1, the follow action we want is to play the next clip. The duration is going to be 3 bars, and we want like 100% chance of that happening. So now this is going to play Alt 1 3 times, and then it's going to go to Alt 2. This follow action is to play the previous one for 1 bar, the previous clip for 1 bar, and that's setting it up so that these make a cycle. If I was going to do this in the arrangement on track 9, I'll just show you one more way to do this if you don't love follow actions. track 9. We're making a 4-bar phrase up to 21. So now we've got Alt 1 for 3 times, and then Alt 2. Listen. Hey, Matt Bloom. So this is just a simple 4-bar phrase. I can consolidate this, click the loop switch, and then drag this back over to session view. If you want to do it that way, you can. Now we've got our 4-bar bass phrase looping, and we've got our risers and our crash ready to go. What other techniques do we have? Bassline clip stacks. How about drum rack clip stacks? We have some piano MIDI that I will get to, but I want to show you the drum rack because it's on the topic of follow actions. Drums group, layer 4. And to keep it simple, I'll play this one down here. Play this one. Beat 1 goes for 4 bars. Now it goes to beat 2. There's another hi-hat layer coming in. What happens in beat 3? A different kind of hi-hat comes in. These are subtle variations to keep the beat interesting. And it's automatically going to the next one. So that every 4 bars, I get a subtle hi-hat variation. Let's hear how that sounds with the groove. You'll hear the closed hi-hat. One of them drops out, a new one comes in. Subtle variation to keep the beat interesting. I'm going to play the bass with our new 4-bar phrase to see how it lines up. All right, at the end of the bass phrase, we went to beat 1. Got some variation happening. Let's fire off our 2 accents. So the crash came, bar 17, starting a new cycle. That means from 17 up to 32, we're going to hear the crash going, and the risers are going to fire off at 24 and then 32. Oh, my timeline was looping. That's why that went that way. Mute the kick drum, making a little build up. When do I put the kick drum back in? When I hear the crash. So those sounds, crash and riser, are telling me when to do stuff in the track. How about the next time the riser comes around, we'll do something else to make it interesting. One, two, three, 4. I wanted to cut all the beats, but notice I needed to do 2 mouse clicks. That was kind of a problem. I think we're going to solve that using different scenes in session view. Got some flangey kind of risers happening. And on the crash, I dropped the beat back in. So this crash symbol is telling me what to do, when to do it. And the risers are giving me a clue like, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. Get ready. That's so you don't have to listen to the metronome. You don't have to count. You don't have to look at anything visually. You can play with your eyes closed and know what's going to happen because you can hear it coming with the signals built into your phrases like risers and crash. So let me know if you have any questions about that. I'd like to move on to a drum rack with follow actions. In case you don't use follow actions a lot, here's what I would do. Select all these clips and do, in the follow action, put in the number 4 over here for the duration of the follow action time. That means each clip is going to play for 4 bars. And you can see these are 4 bars of a MIDI. So all those 4 are going to make a 16-bar phrase, and it's basically going to change to a different little pattern every 4 bars. So we select them all, turn on follow actions, 4 bars long, turn up the chance to 999 to make it like totally sure it's going to happen. Now, the first three, we want to do the action to go next, which means it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. But the fourth one, we don't want to go to the next clip slot. We want to go back to the top clip slot. And follow actions have this really cool thing that says first, which means the first clip in that stack. I call these clip stacks. So right now, we made some simple drum variations in a stack of different clips, and we're going to use follow actions to trigger them over a 16-bar phrase so that it always sounds interesting. As a producer in studio time when you're making your tracks, this is a really easy way to make beats because you can start by like just putting in some drum sounds, duplicate that, add another one, duplicate that, add another one, and you end up with a clip stack that you make really simply. Then you just turn on the follow actions and go through them, and each one gets more developed. So that's a fun little way to make clip stacks. Now we have piano chord progression. I think I'll talk about that last. And 4 layers of drum scenes. So when we're talking about making variations and repetition, the way to build a loop into a song is with variation and repetition, where you're kind of hearing the same loop repeat, but it's different. Every time you hear the crash or every 8 bars, a new sound comes in to keep it interesting, or maybe a sound drops out. So when you're making a song and you're trying to figure out how to make it interesting, do not use one single drum loop, because then your only option is to mute the loop and have a breakdown. The idea is to have several layers of drums so that when you get bored, you can launch a new layer. Or if you get bored, you can mute a layer that's been in for a long time. Examples of layers might be a closed hi-hat, open hi-hat, ride cymbal, and then snare drum and a hand clap. Those are 2 variations. Or then having a conga and a tambourine. So all the standard drum sounds, if you put them on different tracks and different clips, you can bring them out in and out at different times. Let me show you what this looks like with our basic ingredient scene. So I'm going to play the kick drum and the bass line. And I'm going to play with these 5 layers to make something that sounds like music, I hope. And really, I should fire off our cymbal crash so we have our indicator ready. So I'll do that right here. All right, this sounds like the intro of a track. Mix in, closed hi-hat, little clap coming. Next time we hear a crash, I'm going to fire off layer 1. There's the reverse crash. Track 3 is kind of like the first, like the main beat. So cruising on this one. Starting to feel like it's time to change. So next time I hear a crash, I'm going to put layer 2. And that one just complements layer 1. And on and on. And this whole time, every 4 bars, the hi-hat pattern is changing. So I got this little follow action robot changing tracks for me, making it sound interesting. Next time, let's fire all these. There's another hi-hat on layer 3. And layer 5 is this cool little static layer. Matt Schultz sounds more like Steve Knotts, but the resemblance to music is definitely there. Ha, ha, ha. And here's a hot producer tip. When I'm planning out a track, I know from DJing, I want to have a main intro drop, a second drop that gets bigger, a breakdown, the third drop that's like the main drop that has everything. But after the main drop, I still want to have a little secret dub section with a new sound that hasn't been heard before. So layer 5, I'm not even going to play layer 5 until after the climax of the track when we're getting into the mix out section, because it's going to be a sneaky new sound that comes in and people don't know, oh, is that new sound? Is that the DJ mixing a new record, or is that part of the old track? So as a producer, it's a really good idea to have an extra drum layer that you bring in for like the last part of the track, the mix out or the dub section, or the law of the 12-inch when you have a 12-inch vinyl and the last section is like this super dope breakdown where a tambourine comes in or a conga or something. Keep one sneaky little drum layer for the end of the track because it keeps you from getting bored, it adds something interesting to the music, and it makes it more exciting for the listener to feel a new sound coming in when they're totally in the groove. So repeating how to escape the 8-bar loop. Number 1, use some follow actions to have small variations in your drum racks with your MIDI notes of your drums. Option number 2, get a bunch of different layers so you can play them at different times. And in the overall view, what are we doing here? We're looking at the ingredients of the song. I keep them all up top in this clip zone. And this is kind of like my do not delete area. Up here, keep all these. Down here, if I have the main drop and the chorus or whatever, I can go and like delete one of these. It's not a big deal. But I learned the hard way. If you delete all your clips and then you don't have them backed up on the top section, you could actually lose your ideas and be wasting time recreating them. All right, what time is it? 12:30. Wow, I've been talking a long time. I was just talking about ingredients. Next thing is chord progressions to escape the 8-bar loop. This will make sense if I play the bass line and the chords together. So this depends on your musical ability. If you are into chords and theory and like playing an instrument, then you can just kind of press record and record some jam, If you're using sample pack or MIDI clips or something, you might need to think more in terms of editing. So I'll show you this as an 8-bar loop of chords. And what I did to work with these was I chopped them down to make them shorter. So when the main bass line is doing this loop where it stays on one chord, there's no chord change. Do, 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 do. It's still a B minor. For the chord loop, I essentially just took a piece of the long section and looped it. So the hot tip for this is when you want to escape the 8-bar loop, you can actually create a climax by making a short loop from a longer piece. So if you get a MIDI file that's a long chord progression, whatever, well, this one was 24 bars. I was just jamming. I was jamming on push, fooling around. I recorded 24 bars and then found the loops that sounded best within it. So with your MIDI clips, do a jam, play around, record what you're jamming with, then cut shorter loops to make the sections of your song. So the chord progression up top is 8 bars of these 2 chords changing with a little rhythm. And then for that hypnotic groove part, it's just 1 bar of 1 chord. Let's listen to this together. How do I know when to drop a beat? I'm going to use my risers. My kick drum is doing some little grace note patterns. Here comes the riser coming in. Maybe I'll drop these first 3 layers on that crash. Little mini crash, hi-hats coming in. Next time the crash comes in, I can go to launch this stack of clips on track 4. This was the riser. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I've got this layer 4 doing a 16-bar loop, different hi-hats that are changing around. So I'm good for 16 bars. I'm hands off. I can go over and play a piano solo, which is the last trick I would recommend for escaping the 8-bar loop. Matt Schultz, the crackling riser sounds dope. I don't know if you were here in the beginning. Did you see how I made that? That was just some static loops loops of static noise from my sample library with clip automation. And I recorded this little melody loop right before the live session today to show you that the best way to escape the 8-bar loop is jam on your instruments. What about when that gets boring? Take it down an octave. That's a caveman solo. I'm just finger drumming on here to show you that that's my favorite way to escape the 8-bar loop is get a loop going where you've got risers every 8 bars, a crash at the beginning for an accent, maybe a reverse crash that acts like another riser. While that loop is going, hop over to your instrument of choice and do some finger drumming or play on whatever you have or play a synth or tweak a filter on your synth. That's the best way to escape the loop. And when all these things happen at the same time as recording into the arrangement, you can end up with a cool piece of music. Matt, okay, so if you didn't see that, for a quick review, I took a piece of static noise, added some clip automation with a high-pass filter sweeping down and volume coming up to make this static arrive at a crescendo. My favorite part is how it stops at the end. For a secret bonus, you can do send that up into a delay. So you get the riser and the delay. It's so much fun. Yes, totally live dub mixing. Now, how does all this turn into music, right? We were talking about like escaping the loop, ending up with a piece of music you can play. Well, if you don't want to click the mouse and try to get every sound on the right moment, then what you might want to do is make some different scenes. So right here, I have something called main drop, where it's got everything in this horizontal line is going to start playing when I launch the master channel. So the crash, the risers, the operator lead, which we didn't hear yet, but you'll hear it, chords, bass line, and the drums, which sounds like this. Now let me make some space under here. And we're gonna get a new command. At this drop, I just wanna mute the kick. Now I've got the same loop with no kick drum. I'm gonna do Command-Shift-I right here, insert new scene, or capture and insert. That's under the create menu, capture and insert scene. What this does is make a copy of all the clips that are playing, put them into a new scene, and this gives us a variation with no kick drum. One more time, capture and insert with all the drums muted. Now check this out. I've got the main loop. I want to create a breakdown. I go right here, launch scene, got automatically titled number 4. Now I can bring in the drum beats. I'm going to turn up the kick drum louder because I want it to really hit when I drop it. And thump it in there. So here I have the main drop. Call this one no kick. And the little brother of no kick is going to be no drums. There's my crash. And we have a scene happening here with our harmony, melody, risers, and no drums. The best way I can describe for how to escape the 8-bar loop is have 2 phases of your music. One is the drop with the bassline beats and everything happening, and the other one is the breakdown with no drums. Just like if you're doing a live jam, if you're playing with a live band, you tell the drummer to shut up for a minute during a breakdown, right? Or if you're jamming with a synth and a drum machine, you can turn down the volume or mute the drum machine to have a synth jam where you play with some filters and freak out the synth. Well, in live, we're doing the same thing. We're having basically a main drop that's like the active phase and the no drums, which is like the breakdown phase. And by going back and forth between these 2 scenes, you're going to have enough to make a piece of music. The last thing I want to show you is a little trick for the legato switch. See, every time I fire this scene, the crash is going to start again. Now that's kind of cool for re-triggering like in a DJ setting, but what I want to be able to do is get to the beats without restarting the crash. And we're going to use the legato switch in the launch window. So open your little launch window and legato launch mode. This is not legato MIDI notes. This is legato launch. This will take over the play position from the previously playing slot, which means I can fire a new scene without re-triggering the crash. Let's see how this works. The idea here is I want to be able to cut the beat without re-triggering the crash thing. That one was not legato either. Let's do legato on all these. It essentially makes the music continuous when you're firing different scenes. And I think I want these whole sections up here are going to keep looping at the way they were doing before, and I can play different scenes to get different stuff with the beats. The 16-bar crash is still staying on the same cycle while I fool around and re-trigger the drums and everything. So now what we have is a piece of music where we've got a bass line, melody, chords, risers and a crash, kick drum, and drum loops. All those things are varying over 8 bars to keep the interesting phrases happening. And now we have enough to hit the big red button and record something. And it's 12:42. This is going to be an improvised jam. And do I need anything else? No, I'm going to go for it. Press stop to get the cursor back, playhead back to the beginning. Check my arrangement. I'm going to delete everything out of the arrangement so I don't get on top of myself. Make sure the master loop switch is off. Back here in session view, this is my little checklist for recording, and I might even play a little solo on that thing. That would be kind of cool. So hit the big red button, and how do we want to start this piece of music? Let's start with the instrument group and the risers. When the 8-bar loop comes around, I think I'll hit the crash. And maybe just one beat. All right, now we got the beat coming in. Check over here, make sure we're still recording. Looks like it's all good. You can see we're recording the automation when I tweak stuff. Get into a little break. All right, I've just played a little solo. I don't know, you can't see my hands maybe. That's what I was doing. Getting ready for a breakdown. So let's lead towards the breakdown by dropping out the kick drum, just using a couple simple scenes. Here comes a crash. How long are we in? We're already in 2 minutes of jam. Am I using the push? Yes, I'm using the push. Remember I was talking about that little sound? Now we're going to do a customized build up by adding some drums. And notice the 16 bar crash and the 8 bar risers are just looping, going on and on and on, doing their thing. Now we got the main beat coming in. A little variation. We haven't heard this loop with that scratchy thing yet. So that works for this section. Let's do a little mute switch dub solo with that operator lead. Play a little bit longer. So now I'm using my mouse to just make some little dub variations on here. Did not want to pan that. All right, so that was a dub solo with the drums. Let's do the chords now. This one. And cymbal crash, fire off a new little loop. What's missing? Kick drum. Here comes the build up. And drop the kick drum on the crash. So now all I'm doing is playing with my effects using one delay with the B send, turn up the delay, mute the sound, and have some fun with it. Now I'm going to mute the static because we've been hearing that for the whole track. We're heading towards the outro. We are at 5 minutes, good length. How do I get to the outro? I'm going to start muting sounds down. Got rid of that hand clap. All right, now we're pretty near the end of the track. You can hear because like the main layers are gone. We could have muted the bass line at the last one too, but whatever, it's a live jam. And we'll call that the ending. 6.5 minutes, and we just made an improvised little dub jam using basically 2 scenes in session view and a few clips that are rotating through 8-bar loops to stay interesting the whole time. And we got all the automation recorded, so I can press stop, play it back and listen, and see how it sounded. So in 50 minutes, we looked at how to escape the 8-bar loop with a 99 BPM track, down-tempo kind of groove. We started with the ingredients list, where we just did our sound design, made the sounds, programmed the bass line, programmed the chords, put in some drum layers, and a riser, and a crash. So really, this is a 5-channel track. Kick drum, percussion drums, beats, instruments, riser, and crash. Then, to make some development, we use different layers of drums that happen at different parts of the song, so we have something interesting to do when it's time to change. For automated variation, we use some follow actions in the beat loops and in the bass line, so that it's cycling through phrases that have a little indicator that tells you something's going to change, or 4 bars just went by, there's a new sound coming in. To accent those, we made risers with some clip automation, with a few layers doing 8-bar cycles that go through a little volume and frequency change to tell you that something's changing or something's happening. And for the rhythmic grammar, or the exclamation point that tells you something happened, we have a crash symbol that happens on the downbeat of bar 1 and bar 9, and there's a reverse crash coming before those two to indicate that something is changing. Oh, there's my little live solo that I played. That's not bad. Playing a live solo is fun, and look at the pattern. I played a solo, then it got a little bit boring. What did I do? I went up an octave and did the whole thing again. Classic trick, if your solo is getting a little stale, move up an octave and just repeat the whole thing. People are gonna like it even more the second time. So those are a bunch of techniques I used for escaping the 8-bar loop. And then I built some scenes where I could fire off using scenes in the main channel to get the combination of sounds I want. I did a second scene that has the harmonic stuff with no kick drum, and a third scene with just the harmonic accent stuff with no percussion at all. And I activated legato mode on these clips so that they will stay looping within their 8-bar phrases when I change how I launch the different percussion. And that allows me to make breakdowns like we're hearing right now, continue hearing the risers on the same sequence without re-triggering the crash every time I re-trigger the drums. And from there, I was able to hit the big red button, start launching scenes, tweak some clips, record it into the arrangement, and get a cool piece of music where I was free to use the mouse for effects with my delay and mute, which is another way to make a track interesting, actually. Dub mixing, I think, is the #1 best way to escape the loop, because you could have just a loop playing and create an interesting piece of music by muting the drums, unmuting the drums, mute the vocal, unmute the vocal, put them into effects, play with the effects. That's the reggae dub technique for making a piece of music interesting, but you know what? It works fantastic for electronic music, especially in session view with Ableton Live, which is basically why me and Matt Schultz love it so much. Matt, 99 BPM is almost up-tempo for what you're doing right now. You're working around 75 on your recent tracks. Yeah, that is pretty deep and dubby. By the way, I think I played some of your stuff yesterday on my Twitch set, and tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, I'm doing another set on Twitch with the Birdcage Radio Spring Raid, and I'm doing a dub techno set. So I think there might be some Matt Schultz coming in there, but it's like 110 BPM. I used to think 110 was slow. Now I'm like 110 is boogie. All right, so anybody watching in replay land, drop a comment if you have any questions. And this template we're looking at right now is going to be available as a live pack as soon as I pack it up and put it on Gumroad for educational purposes only. Some of these samples I did not play myself on a goatskin drum that I made. So this is going to be for you to learn about structure with ingredients of clips and scenes. You're not going to have license to publish it as your own work, but you could definitely download it and learn from it and play around. Then swap out the beats to make them your own if you're interested. Sloth mode in effect, yes. I got a couple minutes left. If anybody has a question, drop it in the comments right now. It takes a few seconds to pop up, so we'll let that let this music vibe out until I see if any comments happen. Joseph, best software to record yourself, Ableton, like you're doing right now. Oh, I'm using OBS. That's freeware, and you can get it from, obsproject.com, I think. And you need to set up your camera inputs and your audio inputs and your mic input to get it all working, but it's free and it works with PC and Mac, and there's a ton of tutorials online for how to use it. It's very stable. It's been around for years. So I recommend OBS for recording yourself on screen capture or streaming. This is a cool jam. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Leitas, hey, how you doing? It came in, looks like you're at the end, but you can watch the replay from Lithuania, I think. How cool is that? And when I'm really producing a track for an actual album, I make a lot of scenes. You know, it could be, you're welcome. I might have like 4 big chunks in session view where there's the intro, then the main drop, then the breakdown, then the after dub or whatever I call it. You know, I do like to build out tracks in session view so I can basically just click down through the scenes and have the whole song come out That makes it really easy to keep your hands on the knobs for tweaking filters or LFOs or effects or anything and doing an actual live performance. It sounds like a full piece of music. It's as much fun as improvising live. And at the end, you have the whole thing recorded into the timeline so you can do your final automation, export a pre-master, get it mastered, and put it out as an actual piece of music. I think the best thing about Ableton Live is that it lets you create studio albums that feel like a person is inside the music having fun. That's what we want to listen to as audience members. Yeah, Matt, slow BPMs do open up a ton of space. That's totally true. You can have a really stripped down, simple arrangement with all the space in between. So that's going to be it for me. I'm Steve Knotts. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate you hanging out. And in replay land, if you have any questions, drop a comment and I'll get back to you.